Good evening, everybody, and it's a pleasure having you, as always, joining us today. Um, Busy start to 2020. I hope that you're all staying very healthy and taking care. The session today is the session on Saudi Arabia. Thank you for those of you that joined us. Obviously, we had to move it to this week. Apologies for the change, but at the same time, I am super happy to be able to be joined by three esteemed guests to talk about the activity that's happening in Saudi Arabia. To put things into context, I'm just going to put a few slides explaining the evolution of Saudi in the context of the wider MENA region. But it's a pleasure today to have Nora Alsarhan, who's the Executive Director of Investment from Saudi Venture Capital Company, who have been big supporters of MAGNiTT and sponsors of the report. And I would like to applaud them for the work that they've been doing and really driving and shaping the startup ecosystem in Saudi Arabia. Omar Almajdouie, who's the founding partner of Raed Ventures, one of the early and leading VC funds from Saudi Arabia, and it'd be great to get his take on the activity. And Mazin Alshanbari, who's the investment director of Jada, who's obviously the fund of funds that is leading and spearheading the investment landscape that's happening in Saudi through investment in the VC and PE space. Really, last year was a remarkable year for the Saudi ecosystem. Again, just to explain what MAGNiTT is, for those of you that don't know, we're the leading venture data platform for what we're now coining as emerging venture markets. And why is that important? Predominantly because we are now growing in terms of geography that allows us to benchmark performance, not only in MENA, but across other geographies that have many similarities, but also some differences along the way. And when you look at the platform and where we've seen the data, Saudi has really been a key driver of MENA, but it allows us to benchmark across other geographies. At this point, we've tracked close to $6.6 billion worth of investments over the last 10 years in the region. And when you look at 2020, it was really a record year across the whole space. In MENA, it was over $1 billion worth of investment in 496 deals that took place. Turkey, for instance, also saw a record year of funding, and Pakistan as well saw a record year of funding. But today we're here to talk about the landscape in Saudi Arabia. And where the MENA region has seen continued growth, this chart showing that there was a 13% increase in the total amount of funding year over year, despite a slight drop in the number of deals that have taken place. When you look at the actual Saudi landscape, it was a record year by all accounts. Total amount of funding was up 55%. Total amount of deal transactions, one of the only geographies to have seen both an increase in transactions and the total amount of capital being increased, was up 35%. And when you look at this chart, the green number is what we call disclosed deals, amounts that have been shared in terms of investments through the platform. Undisclosed, as you know, you tend to see some investors share information that is undisclosed. So we create a proxy based on algorithms and engineering on the MAGNiTT platform. And the line at the top is the total number of transactions that have been taking place. So again, a very positive year for Saudi Arabia with 88 deals in this space. But again, MENA and Saudi Arabia definitely saw what we are calling the tale of the story of two halves. A lot of the record investments that took place in both MENA and in Saudi was driven by a record H1. A lot of the momentum came from the spillover of a very strong 2019. The investors on the call and those on the webinar will know that it takes on average 9 to potentially 12 months to close an investment deal. So you can pretty much say that many of the deals that took place in Q1 had already been in discussions early into or the later part of 2019. What you did see was a slight drop into H2, both in the number of deals and the amount of transactions, but actually it was markedly less than it was for the whole of the MENA region. And I anticipate that as we go into 2021, that pace will continue. How does that compare to the rest of the region? Well, at this point, the three largest ecosystems of note are UAE, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, with the other geographies also leading into the overall figures. But what you saw was that in terms of the number of deals, as you see here, of the top three kind of ecosystem players, Saudi Arabia was the only one to have seen a significant increase in deal transactions. This was despite a drop in the number of accelerated deals. When we looked and we spoke about on the MENA webinar, the large driver for the drop in transactions was that accelerator programs had to go online, or some just had to stop because of the COVID impact. In Saudi Arabia, you still saw an increase in the number of transactions that were taking place. And with regards to the amount of capital deployed, you now see that it's becoming on par to Egypt in terms of the total amount of capital that's deployed, up 55% year over year. And again, when you start looking at the numbers, I know that through discussions that I have with many of the entities and the stakeholders, there's this question of how do we get to unicorns? How do we see bigger exits? How do we see bigger investment deals? What you have seen is a step change in the ticket sizes of later stage. In fact, there's more later stage Series B and Series A investments in Saudi than ever before. And when you start looking at what you need to have to get to that valuation, you start seeing larger ticket sizes to match that. And I think what's most interesting is that you're also seeing more players investing in Saudi Arabia than ever before, and some even more actively. Obviously spearheaded through the activities of Jada and SVC, but also regional and international VCs interested in Saudi. And so I think for me, it's important just to put that into a little bit of context. And for anybody that's interested in any of the reports, you can go on MAGNiTT. But today is not about me. It's to listen to the speakers that we have and the guests that we have joining us on the call. So if I can please ask each of you to unmute, and then we can jump straight into it. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you here today. I like jumping straight into the questions. The idea for anybody who's on the call, if you have questions, please share them in the Q&A and we'll get to them. We'll start off with about 20 minutes of me just throwing some questions that are interesting for me. Nora, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you. 2020, record high in terms of number of transactions, amount of investment in Saudi. Clearly strong indicators, not only at a venture capital level, but at an economical level. What do you believe were the kind of key drivers to these numbers, and how do you think that will progress into 2021?
Oh, thank you, Philip. Thank you for having us in this session. So let me summarize my answer. So I believe I could start with saying COVID-19 pandemic and the frequent lockdown helped in accelerating digitalization and the utilization of most of the e-commerce applications. The fresh injection of investment by Jada, by SVC, and the private sector, the private sector stimulus that took place. Definitely, I could also say the ease of regulation that took place in the past 2 years helped increasing the number of startups, increasing the number of investors, and the value of investment as well.
And I think that's extremely notable. I mean, obviously, at the top of the agenda of the government is to try and drive this change. And can you just give some examples of those government policies that have made it easier for startups to be operating in Saudi Arabia? Again, MAGNiTT will have an audience of people from outside of Saudi. So for them, it's just interesting to see how much things have changed from that perspective.
So let me give you the background. So 3 years back, before launching SVC and Jada, we gathered around the table from SAGIA at that time, which is MISA, the Ministry of Investment, Ministry of Commerce, Capital Market Authority, and many private sector players, and Small and Medium Enterprise Authority, which was just launched at that year, to look at the hurdles that face the sector, VC and PE sector. How can we grow the sector? So we looked at it from companies' law perspective, Capital Market Authority, investment and fund regulation, capital market institutional regulations, and entrepreneurship ecosystem development, raising awareness. So before launching those two government funded funds, the association was launched, the PEVC Association. Those regulations several workshops took place to enhance the regulations. MISA worked on a couple of initiatives to attract foreign startups, foreign investors, foreign entrepreneurs as well.
Thank you. Omar, we've known each other for a few years now. You're a very active investor. You've seen all the startups. You've seen the activity grow. I'm sure you are super pleased to see what's changed in the Saudi ecosystem. Last year, we saw more later stage investments than ever before coming from Saudi-based startups. A simple question. Do you think you're seeing more deal flow than ever before? And are you seeing better quality startups? And what has potentially changed during that time?
Yeah, definitely, Philip. What happened? So the first investment that Raed did in Saudi Arabia was back in 2015 in Morni. And after that, we stayed in silence for about maybe 6 months or 8 months until we found another company, which is Fodex at that point. This type of gaps we don't see. Actually, we are seeing here on a daily basis a couple of startups, of Saudi startups or Saudi-based startups in a daily basis. So this is something drastically changed in just a few years. In 3 years or 4 years, everything changed. Back to your question about what was the triggers of that. So I remember that when Sagia, which is MISA now, announced the opening doors for entrepreneurship license and for VCs and for that sort of things, I think that was just a kickoff of something big happened in Saudi Arabia also. The openness, the inclusion of that mandate was very interesting. And people felt that now Saudi Arabia now focusing on innovation in their land, regardless of their nationality, race, or religion, or whatever. They will empower the entrepreneurship in their land, and they want people to come to Saudi Arabia, which is something powerful. And I remember some of my friends in Egypt and UAE and Jordan calling me, Omar, is it true? Is it right? The perception about Saudi Arabia is always that it's closed environment and it's very hard to get in. Now, can I come with my full ownership or should I partner with someone? Basic questions that alhamdulillah, now it's nothing, and nobody is really talking about these type of things. So that level of inclusion and that level of openness really kicked off a very interesting momentum, not only in the entrepreneurship side, but also on the funding side. So we are seeing now an increasing numbers and percentages of FDIs in every deal in Saudi Arabia, alhamdulillah. And that is hugely because of the backing of SVC and Jada to many VCs regionally and globally, but also because of the attractiveness of the market that is proving with time that it's one of the most promising markets in the region.
Thank you. And I always say that last year when we were at the 500 Startups Retreat and Dr. Mazin came as MISA with a team on the ground, ready to give licenses within the period of the weekend that we were there to try and help any of the startups that were at the retreat. It was incredible. With his team working over the weekend in Saudi, it was clear that we're open. In terms of dry powder, Mazin, clearly there's a lot of demand for capital. There's a lot of interest in capital. How much dry powder do you think that there actually is available in Saudi Arabia for startups and investment in the landscape?
I think there is plenty of dry powder. When I say plenty, I mean enough, a bit, even a little more than enough. That being said, the deal flow is there. It's building little by little, and remember the funds that we invest in have an investment period of 4 or 5 years. So as we invest today, they will have the coming few years to invest. So yes, there is plenty of dry powder, and the benefit of that is to the entrepreneur at the end of the day, them being sort of selective to which GP they believe brings the most to the table, complements the set of objectives that startup needs at that specific time or at that specific stage in their fundraising journey. And I think that's a very positive thing for any founder right now who is or a wannabe founder who's currently in a job and is thinking to start a business. Capital is practically the last thing that he should be worried about, as long as he's perfecting his craft and he's serving a valid need with a good value proposition. I think he will definitely find the right capital, not just any capital.
And so I believe Jada recently announced a couple of investments in VC funds here in Saudi last year. Are you seeing more interest from international VCs coming to Saudi Arabia, setting up, participating in the activity? What do you think is going to be the catalyst to see more venture capital coming to Saudi Arabia?
I mean, international interest, especially from Silicon Valley and Asia, has been extremely growing over the last 2 to 3 years, and you see quite big names coming and participating in more later stage rounds, I would say. Businesses that are developed, that are showing that level of traction that would ease the nerves of an offshore investor. So that interest has been there. It's been growing. The idea of a foreign fund coming and setting up shop here is a little more trickier than it can be. There's a lot of funds who got more broader mandates that just focus on emerging markets regardless, and they want to maybe deploy a ticket or two here in the region. Those are been happening. For us to support such strategies is not yet something we're really looking into. We're more focused on people who are coming and establishing a very significant presence here. And when I say here, I mean Saudi, to predominantly generate the deal flow, build the relationships. As a lot of people would say that there's quite a few deals going around with a lot of money, but these are the really super sophisticated Rolls Royce of deals, and every market, there is a shortage of these really sophisticated deals. The benefit now is for those who actually can go and identify a diamond in the rough very early on, identify character in the founders, and then hopefully discover a gem in the rough very early on, and then back in them later on in the game. So yeah.
Awesome, thanks. Nora, you speak to any startup founder, and I assume also VCs, and they'll tell you talent is the key driver to success of any startup. And talent in Saudi, I was interviewed today by somebody, and I said, it's not that there's a lack of talent, there's a lack of experienced talent of startup culture. How do you see stakeholders in Saudi Arabia supporting the development of startup talent in Saudi Arabia, and how do you see that developing over the next couple of years?
So I believe, Philip, we're all aware of the recent announcement that you hear here in Saudi Arabia about the premium residency center, the 24 multinational companies moving their regional headquarters to Riyadh, the openness, as Omar mentioned. So about the experience, so when we started, the first thing that we did, we brought 500 startups to give VC Unlocked course here in Saudi for the emerging fund managers. Jada, my colleague Mazin, can speak about the emerging fund manager course. They do it with Professor Florian from LBS. And we tried to accelerate those emerging fund managers. And at the same time, we have foreign, international, global, and regional fund managers. And this is not their first fund. So I'll talk again about those 24 multinational companies moving their headquarters to Saudi. The one that caught my attention is 500 startups. So in the past 3 years, we've seen MENA 500 Startup Accelerator program take place in Saudi with at least 50% non-Saudi companies. So talents are now attracted to come to Saudi, and we're much more open to welcome talents.
And I'm a big believer, I mean, personally, that the more open it is, competition is healthy. Even if international companies are coming to Saudi to compete at a service level, at a product level, it'll breed better companies. Omar, one of the things that we've seen historically, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of Saudi companies have historically been Saudi focused. And yet you as an investor know that scale is the name of the game. These companies need to start expanding beyond borders and looking at a regional, if not international footprint. Are you seeing the founder mentality change? Are people looking to expand opportunities beyond borders, or do you believe that it's sufficient for them to remain Saudi focused only?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Actually, the emergence of the Saudi founders is very interesting also to look at. See, I know, for example, Noon Academy founders since 2016. And I saw how they evolved from year over year in terms of how do they really look at the markets and how to also adapt new models and technologies in their startup. So Noon Academy now they are operating in 4 countries: Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Pakistan, and India, which is something that is we couldn't really even dream of back in 2017 or 16. They are Mersul now. They are in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and scaling also in Kuwait and UAE. Fodex now in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and UAE and Kuwait. And
so it's happening.
It's already there. So it's already the startups based in Riyadh. They are now expanding in the whole region, and hopefully that also they can really think about global scale, which I think it's viable so far. I don't think that there is anything they lack not to really go global. So this is something that is happening. This is something that is very healthy. I think we are still in the learning curve. I think each of the startups had its own way of approaching global markets. Some of them matures much faster because of the quality hiring. Some of them, they are still in discovery and experimenting mode, but still that is very healthy learning curve. Behind them also, so we already also invested in other startups that are earlier stage now, and almost all of them, they are not talking about Saudi Arabia as their only market. All of them, they are talking about regional market, and now also they are trying to figure out markets that are similar to Saudi Arabia elsewhere in the world. So this is where I think the mindset should really work when it comes to building products and scaling it. It's technology, it's leveraged. No, we need to think about it as something that is scalable. So anything that prevent this scale from happening is not really logical in startup build.
I'm just interested in on this point. Obviously, like as MAGNiTT, we're trying to look at emerging venture markets. So when you mentioned Pakistan, that's a massive market that's relatively close by in terms of geography. You look at Africa, there's many similarities. What do you think's the thing that's going to switch the mindset to think beyond and look at these opportunities? What's the hesitation, and what do you think it's going to take to see more startups look into these geographies?
So, of course, these expanding to Pakistan, to India, to even Egypt is not something easy. You need really a solid team to help you scale there. You need to really empower them and delegate a lot of responsibilities to them and trust them in these responsibilities. This is something that entrepreneurs usually not easy to give when they start scaling, but it's a learning curve. Number two is that many markets like Pakistan, like maybe some others, they are still in term of money, VC money, they are still lacking a lot of there are good gaps in these markets that I think creates good opportunities for startups to scale faster in there, given the population density, given the let's say lack of fundamental services or sometimes infrastructure services. We're talking about trucking, we're talking about logistics, we're talking about education, or let's say edtechs. We are talking about many things that we see in Pakistan that are highly potential, tons of young generations, and still underserved country and population. So this is all creates this opportunity for any startup, not only in Saudi Arabia, but also Egyptian startups are really putting their eyes on Pakistan these days, including Swivel, including Trilla, which both are portfolio companies.
And I think there's also clearly like the M&A opportunities of finding similar companies that are probably doing the same thing in those geographies. We've seen already in the region, the Ubers coming and acquiring the Kareems, so there's no reason that there's no Saudis potentially acquiring companies in Pakistan and vice versa. Mazin, obviously, like for investors, the light is at the end of the tunnel. There needs to be an exit. We're hearing a lot of talk about exit opportunities coming from IPOs in Saudi Arabia. For people on this call, where do you think that this is coming from? And do you actually think that's a reality that can happen this year or next year? Or is that something that's a little bit far off?
That question is a little bit above my pay grade. I don't know. I think exits will come. I know we've been seeing primarily sort of full-on acquisitions by, you know, global conglomerate in whatever space that startup operates within. We continue to see Numu as a platform, as a parallel market, developing little by little as the regulations sort of evolve and matures. And I don't doubt that market will be a great avenue for exit. I've been hearing things, but I'm not sure to what extent, but like SPACs or an equivalent of SPACs can be an option. I've been hearing things along the line of the regulators here considering those structures to help technology startups to list more easier. So yeah, there is multiple avenues. I still continue. I would say over the next year or two, I'd say the big exits will come through acquisitions, M&A, but that could change more rapidly than I imagine.
Thank you. SPACs is all over the place. It's like Clubhouse. You talk about Clubhouse, you talk about SPACs. They're almost as popular. Nora, I mean, SVC, key driver, what's the ambition and goal? I mean, the sky's the limit, but let's talk 2021. What's the objective to try and see happen in Saudi Arabia in the year ahead or the years ahead?
So, Philip, I was just telling you before you go live that this is just the beginning. I really believe that this is just the beginning. So in 2021, I believe you're going to see growth in the number of deals with all those acceleration programs taking place this year.
Do you think there will be accelerators taking place despite COVID and everything, or is it maybe later in the second half?
You will see it in the first quarter, hopefully. And most of the funds now, they have allocation to venture building. We've been hearing about startup studios, so I'm very optimistic about the number of deals and the growth in the number of deals. I believe you will be seeing growth deals happening. We'll see later stage deals happening, and hopefully this year we're going to hear about an exit or a couple of exits maybe. Now Tadawul and the Capital Market Authority allowed direct listing. So we're definitely optimistic about this year.
And what do you think has been the perception outside when you think about the outside perspective of MENA? What is it that you think will need to happen to see more interest in the Saudi ecosystem from beyond the MENA region?
So great question. I was just looking at the list of LPs that we have in our portfolio funds. So far, we've committed to 17 fund managers. They're global, regional, and local. And we see LPs from Korea. We see LPs from China. We see LPs from the States and from Europe. So across the globe. I think this is starting to be more attractive year by year. We've been hearing also government funds from other countries in Southeast Asia and in Europe are interested to invest in the local and the regional venture capital firms. So we've never expected foreign LPs to come this quick, but they're here now. And one more thing, so if you see the number of investors in the list and the report, it's still 47. From our perspective in Jada, half of the fund that we've invested in this year, they didn't start yet. So you will see a huge growth in the number of investors as well.
And that's extremely positive. Omar, not to put a dampener on it, but obviously when there's more capital that comes into it, and it's great to see this support, the first thing that people are aware of is kind of a valuation bubble or a skyrocketing of certain valuation. When there's more capital than demand, you begin to see a mismatch. I hear it a lot. I don't personally, I'm not investing myself to be able to say whether that's the case or not. We have our numbers, but I mean, is the valuation bubble a concern? Is it a reality, or is it just a myth that we shouldn't be worried about?
By the way, one day you should be an investor, or you should be a VC. You are one of the best characters for that.
Thank you very much. One day, inshallah.
Inshallah, soon. Make a big exit, and we'll do it.
I'm waiting for it.
So for the valuations, I don't see bubble actually. I don't see that there is some inflation a little bit, but it's not really something that can worry early stage investors so far. I think that still there is room for quality investors to come and to come with the right valuation, especially when you talk to really tier one founders. They're not really money seekers. They're not really into competition with this or that. They want this investor and this investor, and please, one of you just give me a term sheet and let's close this round. This is what I saw so far, and I am glad that our founders in the portfolio are really mostly, or all of them, are from that type. So we are not really investing any. If, for example, we send a term sheet to a founder that and he will use it, he or she will use it to just create a bidding process with other VCs, that will be a deal breaker for us. Not because we are not interested in the company, but because of this behavior that really doesn't care about the quality of investors that he or she wants to attract, rather than only grabbing a valuation war and make the company overvalued for no reason. The quality founders, they are aware about that, and they don't really want their companies to be bumped into the valuations, to make sure that they can create healthy journey for their startup. And that is what we are looking for in terms of founders when we invest in.
So just to kind of crudely summarize it, those that are sort of smart entrepreneurs or smart investors aren't buying into this bubble. Those that choose to play into the valuation bubble are the ones that aren't necessarily educated in the investment or the VC kind of model.
I don't want to eliminate the fact that there is plenty of money here. So, for example, if we came with $1 million ticket and the founder is actually looking for $1 million only, but because of the amount of overwhelming amount of investors who wants to come in, sometimes this founder or that comes to ask about a bit increase in the valuation to accommodate more investors. This is not really a bubble. This is just a little bit inflation in the valuation that is within the acceptable ranges of the early stage investors. We can do it. But of course, if it's like 50% or 100% increase just to bring some people, or just because of someone gave me better price or something like that, this is totally unhealthy. And especially when it comes to Series B and C. Series A, maybe there are some, let's say, very, very subjectivity, high level of subjectivity in that stage. But in B and C, you just follow the multiples and you just follow the rules of the market. And you can't really just play with the valuation just because there is high demand. It's not. So this is something that great founders are really aware about, and I'm happy that we don't have this problem so far.
Nora, it would be wrong for us not to quickly touch upon the kind of COVID impact on the landscape. I mean, obviously, I was on, I believe, the last plane out of Jeddah at the MIT conference before nearly a year ago when everything got shut down. And in many of the other geographies, COVID has really limited the ability for people to engage. And yet in Saudi Arabia, you saw a 35% increase in the number of transactions. In terms of the investment activity, how has it impacted engagement? I haven't been back to Saudi in a year. Are people still able to meet up? Is there offline activity that's beginning to return? Are people engaging, or is it still very remote at this point?
Well, Philip, at the beginning of the year and when we first experienced the lockdown, we thought that things will slow down. We thought that even us as an investor, we won't see more LPs coming into every fund because, you know, we cap our investment to a certain threshold from the government, both Jada and SBC. But surprisingly, we actually committed to 10 fund managers who all were able to raise the capital from the private sector. We surprisingly hear about deals that took place in the second half as well. You mentioned that the deals that took place in the first half could be deals that were also already agreed on in 2019. But you hear the story of Tamara and you're impressed. Founders coming together, starting up a company, getting their first round, and then getting all the investors interested in their second round. You hear Fudik's story and new investors coming into the game, Sanabil led round, and you still hear about new fund managers again. As I mentioned, we really care about the deal flow creation programs at SBC. And we've been hearing about so many new programs, acceleration programs, venture building programs. And I believe COVID-19 did help that other LPs who've never been attracted to this asset class now are much more attracted to it.
Thank you. Look, I want to open it up to questions in a minute. So if people have any questions, please put them in the Q&A or in the chat. Just to allow a bit of time before I do that. It's become a bit of a tradition. I did it on the Emerging Venture Market webinar. I want a very short answer from each of you. I made 5 predictions for this year, one of which was that Saudi Arabia will overtake Egypt in terms of the activity as well as the total amount of investment. I thought that there will not be mega deals this year. I may or may not be proven wrong, which is a $100 million investment. I believe that we'll see a pickup in exits this year because of an inactivity of exits in 2020, that 2021 will pick up, and that Q4 will be a record quarter of investment because you'll start seeing people beginning to deploy exactly the point that Nora was saying. People now have the cash. It'll take 6-9 months before it gets deployed. I think that the end of the year will be very strong. Mazin, starting with you, then Omar, and then Nora. 3 predictions, please, on the Saudi ecosystem that you believe will take place in 2021.
We'll continue to see new emerging managers come out of the woodworks. More interest from global GPs and LP base in local GPs. I think we will see one mega round, more than 100 million.
Omar.
So I will project something maybe a bit bigger than this. Maybe I will expect 2 unicorns this year to come out of Saudi Arabia this year.
Acquired or IPO or just valuation?
No, valuation.
Just maybe both. You don't know. Maybe both. Okay.
Very good.
Yeah.
That's 1 prediction. The other 2 predictions?
So this is 2 predictions. One unicorn acquired, 1 unicorn listed. So this is 2.
And then 1 more.
And So Saudi Arabia now is number 3 in terms of amount of funding. I think will be number 2 definitely this year easily, if everything inshallah went well. Yani. Hopefully within the next few years, we expect that a lot of policy makers now, they are just focusing on FDIs and focusing on opening up the market. That will really create maybe number 1 by far, that Saudi Arabia can really bring almost all of the good founders, not only regionally, but also globally, to come and be based either in Riyadh or Neom or wherever. And that can create, inshallah, the new momentum of Saudi Arabia very soon. So this is one of the things that I expect, that we will, inshallah, be number 1 in terms of funding in just a few years.
Perfect. Nora?
Yeah, so I believe we'll hear about at least 2 exits, 1 listing, hopefully. I believe we'll see more later stage rounds and more relative M&A activities. What else? And definitely we'll have the 1 billion company.
Okay, perfect.
More deal flow. More deal flow this year.
So, I mean, there's a couple of questions here which we've already answered. So when will you see the first KSA-based global unicorn? Well, we didn't put it in global context, but Omar said that this year will be the year. When do you think that KSA will overtake the UAE in terms of activity and dollar amounts? And does it really matter? Okay, so I'm going to ask Omar that question. Does it really matter? There's this obsession with like who's going to, but in reality, to be a unicorn, to be successful, you've got to be operating in all these geographies. What's your view on that, for instance, Omar?
No, first we are talking about the headquarters of this company. So
Yes,
definitely there are plenty of offices here and there, but the headquarters where the founder is based are the key of the value that can be created for the country. So we are talking about headquarters, not necessarily anything related to the nationality of the founders. Actually, I'm not saying that we are being the number 1 because we want to compete with Dubai or this or that, because actually Dubai is very strong. Dubai is really organically one of the best places to found your company until this point. So competing with Dubai is not something that I think should be the wise thing. I think we should collaborate with Dubai. We should collaborate with Cairo, with Amman, with Beirut, inshallah, with Baghdad, inshallah, soon, with all of these cities and capitals, to really create the best synergy between the countries, to create the bigger opportunity for the FDIs to come to the region. Actually, why the FDIs are not really happy from the region? Because of the fragmentation, because of the lack of synergies between the countries. And if we just can make this synergy, if we can make, and this is what the vision also, part of it is toward, that can create much stronger attractiveness to all of us, and can make us all, inshallah, rich. This is one of the I think the entrepreneurship is one of the areas where we can really work on to really make all of our problems solved, inshallah.
Nora, any thoughts on how we can enhance deal flow coming out of Saudi? Is one of the questions.
So we've been focused on deal flow creation programs, be it acceleration programs, startup studios, venture builders, and we've seen a trend of the VC funds that we've already invested in moving towards investing or working with startup studios and venture builders and accelerators. So that's the plan, and hopefully we'll see more deal flow.
Mazin, there's a question here that says, what are the specific niche sectors that are attracting more investment in Saudi Arabia? Are you seeing any particular areas of focus, especially in the last year, that have been hot?
SaaS and consumer tech, to be honest, I think those are 2 very big sectors. Fintech is catching on like wildfire. It's also coming up. So I'd say these are the 3 mainly. I know they're broad, and there is, you know, within SaaS there is multiple. There is SaaS healthcare, SaaS consumer, SaaS. But yeah, those are the broad categories, I would say.
There's an interesting question here. Maybe Omar or anyone can answer the question. Other than Egypt, are there North African markets that you foresee seeing increased VC growth, or at least, let's call it from Saudi expansion into? We don't often hear of MENA companies going, Egypt, yes, but into the sub-Saharan Africa. Is there an opportunity arbitrage that is currently being missed?
So until this point, Egypt is the most promising and most potential. We see some opportunity in Tunisia, but still with the instability that is there, I think it's not really easy to go there. Still, there is a big lack of infrastructure in Algeria and Libya, and also in Morocco. So there will be opportunity very soon, but I think it may be a matter of years until it become big opportunity for startups to expand there.
Nora, in terms of research and development and investment, I mean, we're clearly talking about government investment in venture capital, but when we look at some of the other geographies that have really seen growth of the startup ecosystem, you talk about investment in R&D, investment in defense, in government ministries that are supported by technology. Obviously, technology has become quite widespread. When you look at kind of deep tech industries or other more R&D driven industries, what's still missing to unlock those in Saudi Arabia?
So in my opinion, capital have never been short in this region. It's the opportunity that was actually short. So we see a couple of initiatives by the government to launch a grant program. Munsha'at launched the grant program. The Munsha'at are working with a couple of universities to work on R&D and patents and so on. So I believe there never been lack of capital. It's just we need to see more opportunities and capital will flow.
Venture builders, we mentioned venture builders earlier. Mazin, your view on this, you mentioned fintech. How open is kind of the idea of investing in fintech venture builders or venture builders at large as a kind of type of vehicle?
It's very tricky because venture builders are normally set up as sort of companies where they invest out of the own balance sheet of that company. It's not the typical GP/LP 220 type of structure that we are used to. We've entertained early conversations with some venture builders on the promise of sort of a fund that runs in parallel to the accelerator in a way where, or the venture builder where the graduates would, sort of be able to generate interest from this fund structure. Have not yet cracked the code on it, to be honest. But yeah, we're always happy entertaining early conversation and seeing how we could sort of do it in a structure that is in line with our mandate.
Okay, perfect. And I don't want to take up too much more time from you guys. I think a last question or last two questions, whoever would like to answer regarding PE funds. Have we seen any growth on that front? And would you consider PE could provide exit for the VCs in Saudi Arabia? Maybe one for Mazin.
Say that again, sorry, I didn't follow.
So in terms of PE funds, have you seen growth in the number of PE funds in Saudi? And do you consider the PE funds to be potential acquirers or exits for the VCs or the investments of those VCs?
Absolutely. In terms of growth, private equity and late stage investments, it's been here since the 90s. It's done in a different way where it's sort of a deal by deal, but we've always had I wouldn't say a super healthy private equity ecosystem, but there was a lot of private capital that was deployed in private companies over the past several years. Now what we're seeing is a migration from that traditional or conventional wisdom of that single asset vehicle to more of a blind pool, traditional private equity structure that is being done elsewhere in the world. And yeah, we're very happy to have deployed it too. And there is a lot more in the pipeline. Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Is there anything else that anybody would like to share before we end the session? Nora, Omar, Mazin? No?
We have a lot of things to say, but I think we need maybe 2 hours.
2 hours.
So let's make it. Let's make it later on.
We'll do it another day. Look, thank you very much to each of you individually, collectively. I'm personally extremely excited about what's happening in Saudi Arabia. I only wish I could come more often, and inshallah this year I'll still be able to come at some point to see you all face to face in person. I want to personally thank Dr. Nabil, Dr. Osama, and all of the SVC team. I think they're doing great efforts and huge work, and their support has been invaluable in creating the report. But not just that, the transparency. I think that through data you can highlight what's happening in Saudi Arabia, not just within Saudi Arabia, but in the region and beyond borders. And that's one of the key mandates for us, is to keep highlighting the opportunities. I speak to VCs in, for instance, Southeast Asia. I've been speaking to people in Africa. When they talk about what some of the challenges that they're facing, very similar to the ones that you're facing. They talk about exit ceilings, that there's a lack of capital. They talk about a lack of investor education, a lack of founder education. And I go back to the point that Omar was saying. I was in a geography last year, and when I said, why is it that you don't come to MENA? They asked, was it language? Was it cost? Was it bureaucracy? 70% of 350 people that responded on the survey said, we have not been shown the way. And I believe, to the point that you're making, Omar, yes, it's difficult to go to geographies. Yes, it's difficult to acquire talent. But I think as you have more category leaders, more people that are leading the way for others, we will see more companies expanding beyond borders. We will see people, and our hope is that through MAGNiTT, we can break down some of those barriers to make it easier for you to identify a potential investment in Pakistan, a Pakistani startup to be able to reach out to MISA or SVC. And as I said in my last webinar, the dream is to have a Chinese investor investing in an African startup, but I don't see why there can't be a Saudi investor investing in a Chinese startup and bringing the different geographies together. But again, thank you very much to all of you and to all of the team at SVC. And we look forward to hosting another session when the H1 report comes out, where no doubt we'll already have broken the records of 2020. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Mazin.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Philip.